Hi everybody and welcome to BPD Update. I'm Steve Strachan, your Chief of Police for the City of Bremerton. This month we got a couple of different things we want to talk about. We're first going to start talking a little bit about police-community relations and a lot of the dialogue that's been going on nationwide. And specifically, we're going to talk about traffic stops and how to stay safe on traffic stops, which is one little piece of that particular dialogue, but an important one in terms of staying safe. So we'll talk about that in the second half of the show. We'll do what we usually do, which is to talk about some of our stats and some things going on around BPD. But let's start first. I'm going to introduce my guests. To my immediate left is Corporal Todd Byers, police officer with the City of Bremerton, of course, as you can tell by the way he's dressed. And to his left is Darrell Thomas, who is the Street Hope Manager for Coffee Oasis here in the City of Bremerton, which is a great organization. We'll do a whole nother show on that about what good work Coffee Oasis does. But welcome, Darrell.
Yeah, thank you.
So here's the deal. Everybody knows that there is a tremendous amount of discussion, a lot of discussion on social media, protests, of course, nationwide. Black Lives Matter. I mean, we all know this. And the issue, among those issues, is relationships between the police and the community, distrust of police, anger and frustration over some shootings and use of deadly force by police officers that go onto social media, and people have very strong feelings about them. I would tell you, police officers have strong feelings about them too. We see things that concern us as well. So. In the midst of all this, and sometimes I find social media to be kind of polarizing. It's these sort of sarcastic, short remarks that aren't really helping. They're just sort of reinforcing what people may think already. There's not a lot of discussion. And there'd been a couple of great community meetings we've had in the City of Bremerton, and I have to give tremendous credit to our faith community. And I love this phrase, Bishop Lawrence Robertson from Emmanuel Apostolic Church, who said, we should focus on how to get the black and the blue home safe every day. And it really, that's a great way to look at it, is what do we agree on? How can we talk about these things in a frank way? And anyway, that's a long lead up to me introducing the topic today, because Darrell, among the many other things he does, he mentioned to me at a meeting, it was a great question. He said, what can we do specifically to talk about how people can stay safe on a traffic stop? And that's exactly what we're going to talk about. So this is going to be a very practical discussion about how to stay safe on traffic stops. Police officers train on how to stay safe on traffic stops all the time, because we have to, because we deal sometimes with people that are very dangerous. But what is the expectation for the person driving down the road? So anyway, that's the topic. So first of all, if I can ask a little bit more background, Darrell, I know I have my opinion and the things I read and the things I see, but from your perspective as a community member, what is sort of the genesis? What is the background of the concern that people have, particularly young black men, when they're stopped by police?
Well, with the historical background as well, that contributes to how people have felt for decades. And so, and if you don't know history, then you just don't know history. But it's a huge part of that. But also just what the social media and the media plays into it, and arousing emotions and hostility and all of those things. And I really enjoyed what you said earlier, just how a lot of the things that are happening can cause an officer to feel a certain way, because especially if you're a good officer and you don't want to see someone killed, or anything like that, seeing the things on the news can make officers feel a certain way as well. So it's mainly just the history and just the things that are in the forefront that cause people to feel unsafe, or it could be criminal behavior, So I remember when I had a past lifestyle, and whenever I was pulled over by the cops, I was paranoid, But so it could be either or.
Right. And you allude to something that occurs to me, which is I've had discussions with people where I've explained, and a lot of police officers are from backgrounds like me, middle class. I've never had any reason not to trust the police. It's never occurred to me. I've never had to worry about where I was going to sleep that night, or where I was going to eat today. Yeah. Never crossed my mind. That is a very different experience than many people experience. And so in other words, we all bring our perspectives and our baggage to every interaction. And you talked as well about the historical element to this and the police's role in society historically, which again, we have a half an hour show, we can't talk about all those things, but all of those things are part of the discussion. So when we see videos, which are concerning, I mean, like I said, I am not going to stand here and say everything that police officers do is right, because they are not. We all know most police officers do a great job. I think everybody agrees on that. But taking all the historical element, the perspectives that we bring, and concerning acts by officers that are caught on video and spread, and I mean, again, it's a concern, and it's a valid one. When you talk to people, if you talk to a young person, or if you talk to a mom, express to me, what is it that they're concerned about? Just that things go south and things go badly?
Mm-hmm. Well, not every traffic stop, I feel, is related to a racial issue. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes parents may not know the behaviors that their children may be doing that may cause suspicion or reasonable suspicion or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But some of it could be racial, but as far as like in our context and in our city, I haven't had any experiences personally with Bremerton PD and feeling like there was any racial tension whenever I've interacted with law enforcement. And so that's just speaking from my personal perspective, and I can't, speak for everyone, but I've never experienced that outside of Oklahoma City, where I'm from. Mm-hmm. And down there it was a lot different. It was, I've been racially profiled down there and things of that nature. Every time I go back, I'm still nervous, and it makes me feel like, oh, am I going to get pulled over? Like, oh, am I going to get searched or asked to, search the car, or, all of those things, even though I have no reason to be, right, guilty or anything. So.
And I would just share with you, and I think you might have been at the same gathering, but a woman who has, I think, teenage kids, and her husband, and she got up and I remember her speaking to me very, very emotionally about her concern for her husband and her kids to get home safe every day. And she wasn't, and I don't know how to say this very elegantly, but I mean, she wasn't a person with an agenda. She didn't have a political element to this. It was just her genuine concern. And it really hit home with me about, this is not, this isn't somebody trying to make a political point. She's genuinely concerned about her husband and her kids getting home every day. And I get it. And I saw her at a meeting a little bit later, and she gave me a big hug, and she said, thank you for listening to me. And I want you to know how much I love the police, and I love our police department. So again, I think you talk about, this is something that I think we can all start to work together on and do this safer. So let's talk to Todd a little bit about this. Traffic stops. Person gets pulled over, and I'll talk in the second half of the show a little bit about what we're doing to alleviate things like implicit bias and making sure the community, we're being transparent. But fact is, we make traffic stops. People get pulled over. In a very basic sense, what should a person do to stay safe?
The best thing to do is, it's a nervous time. Mm-hmm. Most people, I talk about myself too. I've been in law enforcement for 10 years. I still get a little bit of the anxiety when I'm pulled over. So it's a natural feeling. But the biggest thing is being relaxed. As much as you can do to be calm, be very intentional with your actions. A lot of times what will happen is, as you're communicating, sometimes I'll use my hands. As I speak, I move in the direction where I'm speaking. If it's looking for my wallet or looking for something I've misplaced, as I'm talking about it, I move. If you can limit those movements, it's very important, because myself as an officer, any officer making that contact, we want to be safe too. And so we're always on edge. Mm-hmm.
So you're not saying a person has to put their fingers or their hands up.
Absolutely not.
Just be deliberate.
Be deliberate. Okay. We tell people a lot of times, keeping your hands where we can see. Mm-hmm. Hands are key for us. That's kind of one of the things that we key off in this job. So if you can be deliberate and intentional with your hands.
So what are the things that a person does that raises the level of concern and sort of intensity for a police officer? And I think some of the things we may have seen nationally is, if you just watch them, you can see it, that right, there's just an elevation of right, intensity in this interaction. What are the things that are occurring that raise that intensity?
A lot of times what will happen is we make lots of stops, we interact with people, we see that nervousness. It's when that anxiety builds and the they're not direct, they're evasive with their actions or their answers. When they don't seem like they're really communicating with us and there's something's going on, that will up our alarm.
So in other words, what I'm hearing you say is sort of the, I'm talking to you, but I'm not really talking to you. What I'm trying to do is do something else, which is going to draw the officer's attention to,
like a distraction.
Is this person going for a gun? Are they trying to hide evidence? That's what you're saying. Okay, so those are the keys that people are looking at. So a person, the flashing lights go on, the person's on a street. What should they do? Where do they drive? Where should they pull over?
The best thing is a safe place. Find a safe place to pull over. Sometimes it's not going to be convenient in our busy streets to just stop right there. We always want you to go to the right side. Sometimes that means going into a parking lot. We have a lot of people that we encounter who we can read what's going on. We see what's going on, and they acknowledge us, whether it's looking in the mirror. They'll move forward, pull off to a safe place, and then we can have the contact.
So every so often we hear about impersonators, people that impersonate police. They'll get a squad car and put lights in it or something, and they'll try to pull people over, or an unmarked car, and there are departments with unmarked cars, including ours. If a person isn't sure they're a police officer, the person behind is a police officer, what should they do?
Best thing is just to acknowledge that you see the police officer. A good option is, we're tied into 911. Anybody can make a quick phone call to 911. You're automatically going to go to a local dispatcher, and you can explain who you are and where you're at, and they can put your mind at ease that indeed that is an officer making a stop, because an officer has to communicate with our radio.
Okay, so that's perfectly fine. So one of the things that Darrell and I had talked about is, when you combine the issues we're talking about and some of the negative, some of the bad interactions and the baggage we bring, we'll talk again in the second part of the show a little bit about implicit bias and what law enforcement's doing about that, with the Second Amendment and the fact that guns are everywhere in the United States. Anytime you see stats about, why are there so many more shootings in the U.S.? Because we have a lot more guns than anybody else does. And we are running into people with guns all the time. All the time. Now, some of them, a lot of people have concealed carry permits. It's perfectly legal for them to have a firearm. You saw the Philando Castile case in Minnesota, where he had a concealed carry permit, but it was still a deadly shooting. So my question then is, if a person has a concealed carry permit, what should they do when they get pulled over?
Best thing to do is, and we encourage people to exercise their rights to carry. When you are driving, when you do conceal and you're in your vehicle, be aware of that. The first thing you need to do is keep your hands visible, we talked about. I like to see the hands up on the steering wheel. It's a great place, just naturally put your hands on the steering wheel. When the officer makes contact with you, he'll go to his little introduction of himself, explain why he's stopping you, and you can just quickly let him know, hey, I do have a firearm with me.
So, and again, just to be clear, some people viewing this will say, well, that's what Philando Castile did, and it still went badly. That's true. It did, and I wasn't there. I don't know what happened there, but that's the best thing you can do.
The best thing, yes.
Okay, and I know as police officers, we tell officers the same thing, which is if you have a firearm with you and you get pulled over, we get pulled over.
Absolutely.
I've been pulled over too, and you're right. 30 years in this job, and I get nervous if I get pulled over by the state patrol or something, but to keep your hands on the wheel and to say, I have a firearm.
Yes,
okay.
absolutely.
So if a person has a firearm who shouldn't in the first place, again, how does that person stay safe? I mean, obviously that's a much more dangerous situation.
Absolutely. Be straightforward. Explain what's going on. Just be honest with what's going on. And again, the motion of, we see hands. Don't talk with your hands. Keep your hands where they're at. If you explain that the gun's not on you and you direct the officer where the gun is, don't move with your body as you're explaining it. Just keep your hands set. The officer will have several options and how he'll deal with it. Oftentimes what will happen is he'll tell you just keep your hands where they are, and sometimes they move them out of the vehicle. It's going to be an officer discretion decision.
Okay. Last question. It's really just a comment I want to make. You may have seen, the two of you may have seen, there was actually an officer involved shooting another one in El Cajon, California just last week, and it turned out that the person was holding a vaping pen. Vaping pens look amazingly like the barrel of a gun. So here's another whole layer that we're adding to this. But he seemed to be doing it almost on purpose, whether, again, I wasn't there, but to that point, we had one of our officers just last week, a car went by the officer, and what she saw was the barrel of a gun being pointed at the officer, turned around, pulled the vehicle over with the help of some other officers, got the people out, and it was basically a group of people that were listening to music and sort of moving in their car, and they had a vaping pen, and they happened to be pointing it at the officer when they went by. You know, you can call those misunderstandings, you can call those, you know, stupidity on the part of the driver, you can call those officers being too edgy. It depends on your perspective, I guess. But it all comes back to, how do we all stay safe? How does everybody go home safe? We want officers to go home safe, and we certainly want every resident of our community to go home safe as well. As we have these conversations, Darrell, and again, you know, in your role as Street Hope Manager for Coffee Oasis, you work with young people, some of whom are going through difficult periods in their life. Just to sort of finish this particular segment up, we talk about the pragmatic side of staying safe in traffic stops, but what do you have to say? I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, what do you see as the way forward, you know, for police, for our community, for young people to hopefully make this go in a little bit better direction?
Yeah, I encourage people to attend the community PAC meetings that we have, and also, you know, just talk to your local officers. They're normal people, you know. If you have nothing to hide, then there shouldn't be no problem with building a relationship with our local community. And so, you know, I encourage that. You know, community events, we've done basketball events with the cops and things of that nature. And so just encourage people to get involved, because it's not going to happen if we stay on one side of the fence and continue to criticize or, you know, have hostility or negative emotions towards law enforcement. So we all have to come together, and we all have to put our pride down and join hands together.
Great point, including police, by the way. In other words, this is a dialogue. We, you know, in fact, not to be political, but in the most recent debate, the presidential candidates were asked about this, and the comment was made, everyone, by Hillary Clinton, everybody needs to, police need to respect their community, and the community need to respect the police. And the only way that's going to happen is for us to open our ears and our minds and talk to each other and to be frank and have that conversation. So this is a little tiny piece of that. It's about staying safe, which I hope is helpful to people. If you have questions, let our department know. Shoot us an email. We'll have Todd or one of our officers answer it. This is important stuff, and we appreciate both of your time, Corporal Byers and Darrell Thomas, again from Coffee Oasis. Thanks for being with us. Thank you. We'll be right back after this.
I'm Gary Simpson. I'm the Kitsap County Sheriff. Distracted driving has now become one of the major factors in serious injury and fatality crashes in Kitsap County.
When you drive, you need to concentrate.
I'm asking you to put your phone down. It can wait.
Law enforcement across Kitsap County are working together.
We're serious about saving lives.
Please don't text and drive.
Distracted driving emphasis patrols are now underway in Kitsap County.
So in the second half of the show, as we usually do, we'll talk a little bit about some statistics and some things going on around BPD. The first half of the show is obviously very, very important. It's law enforcement. I'm 30 years in this job. I've never seen things as sort of intense and in some ways difficult, but it's also, I think you could also view it in a more positive way as the courageous conversations that a lot of people need to have and want to have. And so we'll talk a little bit about what we're doing about that. We'll start first with our statistics, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, but if you look at August 2014, 15, and 16, you can see that our reports were up just a little bit over last year. Our number of arrests were down pretty significantly from August to 2015. Domestic assault was up just one. DUIs, you can see, were up just a little bit. I'm starting to track now crashes, both injury crashes and non-injury crashes, because you may have seen, or if you watch the show regularly, that our DUI arrests have been trending downward a little bit. So we want to see if that's got a correlation to crashes, and you can see that non-injury crashes were up just a little bit to 38, but injury crashes, crashes where somebody was hurt and went to the hospital, were actually down significantly to 7, so that's a good sign. You can see that we had one robbery, a total of one robbery for the month of August 2016, and 15 mental health calls. Our frequent flyer focus areas, these are the crimes, sort of that quality of life stuff that really make people angry, to be honest with you, that we're focusing on in our city. You can see that trespassing was down to 12, less than half of August of 2015. Our theft calls, though, were up just a little bit to 67. Our vehicle thefts, unfortunately, went up from 8 last year to 14 this year. And this is incredibly repetitive, and I apologize, but almost all of our vehicle thefts are old Hondas. If you have an old Honda, particularly a Civic or an Accord, and when I say old, I mean mid-90s or earlier, get a club. If you get a club, much harder to steal. And like I said, I hate to say this, but old Hondas are very easy to steal, and that's what's going on. We've made some arrests, though, so hopefully that'll come down. Residential burglaries were at 19, up just a little bit over last year, and non-residential burglaries at 9. Our vehicle prowls were down. That's a good sign. Our malicious mischief, that's things like disorderly conduct and vandalism, was down to 16. And then shoplifting at 13. 13 shoplifting cases for a city of our size is actually really good, and that's great credit to our retailers who go the extra mile to try to prevent shoplifting. Let's talk a little bit about some promotions and people being reassigned in our department. We've had a number of retirements in our agency, and we also had Lieutenant Pete Fisher leave our department a couple of months ago to take over as chief at the Fife Police Department. So all of this has necessitated and really given us the opportunity to make a number of changes and promotions within our department. As we talk about police accountability and transparency and doing it right, a lot of it has to do with supervision. Good active supervision is a critical part of making sure that police officers are doing their job the right way. And having been a chief now for 12 years, I don't have it all figured out, but one of the things I've seen is that supervision and good training is a really important part of this. So to that end, at our last council meeting, we had the opportunity to swear in Lieutenant Mike Davis, who now is one of our 3 lieutenants. Lieutenant Davis will have one of the 2 squads, the 2 sort of divisions of patrol that there's one lieutenant in charge of each group. We call it blue and gold, and he is in charge of one of those 2 squads. We also promoted 3 new sergeants. These are all going to be patrol sergeants. We're going to be out on the road supervising our patrol officers. We are very pleased to promote Sergeant Aaron Elton, Sergeant Tim Garrity, and Sergeant Keith Sargent. And yes, he is Sergeant. You can't make this stuff up, but we're very excited about all 3. That I went a little catch-22 on you there. Not major, but sergeant. We also promoted, because the sergeants moved from corporal, Corporal Jeff Schaefer is our newest corporal, and we also swore in our 2 newest officers, both of whom are lateral officers or experienced officers coming from other departments. We swore in Officer Jennifer Korn and Officer Mike Tovar. Jennifer Korn comes to us from Poulsbo PD, and Officer Tovar from Bainbridge PD. So we welcome both of them, and they're great additions to the Bremerton Police Department. As we talk about these promotions, it's a bunch of names and a bunch of people being promoted. What does it mean? What it means is we've gone to a 10-hour, 40-minute schedule with the assistance of the mayor and council. This means that we have overlaps on Fridays, which means we can do emphasis patrols, have a much heavier presence on Fridays, which is good, or we can train and do a lot of extensive training to make sure that our officers are up to date on defensive tactics, use of force, policy, legal issues. That stuff really matters in making sure that officers are doing their job the right way. We have the 2 squads, as I mentioned, blue and gold, and the reason it matters to you is I want you to know how your police department operates and what we're doing to be attentive to the issues that are being raised nationally. So each squad has a lieutenant, which ensures accountability and transparency and consistency among that squad. Those sergeants all report to that lieutenant. That lieutenant mentors those sergeants. Those sergeants in turn are mentoring the corporals and developing our future leadership. And each shift, every single shift, we call it days, swings, and we call it graveyards, which is just a cop term for night shift. Each squad has a sergeant and a corporal. So again, we have really good active supervision. And those promotions get us fully staffed, and we'll be filling some of our vacancies in patrol as well as we move forward with some of those lateral officers we just hired. That's a long way of saying that we are very actively being attentive to making sure that we're doing the job the right way. In the first half of the show, we talked a little bit about police-community relations and how everybody knows it's important. It's at the center of our world. Fighting crime and doing it the right way has to go hand in hand with a high level of trust and legitimacy in the community. And social media and sort of the nature of social media, I think, becomes polarizing. That's an editorial comment on my part, but I think it is. It reinforces, it's an echo chamber, reinforcing what people already think on both sides of this issue. Some people think that Black Lives Matter is just there's nothing to it and it's all made up. Other people think that police, are all a certain way and it's very negative. And I think we all know that neither one of those is accurate. The truth is, can we do better? Can we improve on things? Of course we can. At the same time, most police officers are doing the job very, very well and very professionally. So how do we move forward? A lot of these answers can be found in a framework built by the 21st Century Policing Task Force, which was part of President Obama's initiative about a year ago. And it included some very, very good people. Chief Chuck Ramsey from Philadelphia PD, who I think is one of the best chiefs we've ever seen. A very, very smart guy. Sue Rahr, our former King County Sheriff, who's now the head of our training academy here in the state of Washington, was part of that task force. And it created 6 pillars. You can Google this and read all you want about the report, but it creates 6 pillars that's really a framework for law enforcement to move itself forward. And none of it is controversial. It makes sense. But this is what we do. And I was able to go to Washington, D.C. Last month. I was invited as part of that effort to really be briefed on that and to learn more about it and make sure that we're doing it the right way. All of this is voluntary. We're not being forced to do it, but it's the right thing to do. The answer to these problems we have in law enforcement and the relationship issues and legitimacy issues that some in our community have is not going to be found in social media. It's going to be found in the hard work of policy and training and communications and working with our community. That's what this is about. So to that end, I wanted to mention that we are part of the White House Open Data Initiative, which is part of that 21st Century Policing Task Force, which means that we put out every month a lot of data. Data is important because implicit bias and issues related to unfair policing is not found in stories or anecdotes. It's found in data. It's found in numbers and patterns. And so we can talk more about implicit bias and some of the things we're doing to make sure that we're training the right way. But what we're doing now for sure is putting out data every month. You can go to our website and you can find out, you can see every arrest we've made, every case report we've taken, every infraction that we've written, where it is, what the age is, what the gender is, what the race is. You can look at every single point of data that we have, and that's the essence of transparency and data. We will also be getting you use of force very soon. We don't have it out on the web yet, but we will very soon. We're doing a lot of different things at Bremerton PD, and working with the community is where this is going to get better, in my opinion. It isn't going to be from DC, it isn't going to be from the media, it's going to be from us in this community. We're doing some very good things. We're constantly trying to get better, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate this community and the fact that they work with us so closely and so well as we move forward to become an even better department. A lot of information on the show this month. We appreciate you watching because we think this is important, and we appreciate you caring about what happens at your police department. And we'll see you next time on BPD Update.